Oh yeah, I'm streaming, I think. Yep. All right, we're live. I guess I can just here's the analytics. I can edit this. Event-driven meetup. EventStore as a whole stack plus cross entity invariant. What are we using that? Indexing and locking. Concurrency. Yeah, that's what we'll call it, concurrency. Wow. One character over. Yeah, that's better. Let me know if you can see it on the YouTube channel. Should be live. I'm trying to cram in breakfast as well. My Friday is just shot as well. Okay. Event sourcing DB taking it to the next level. I don't know. I'll probably edit this. I'm wondering how the editing and actual online editing for YouTube is these days. Apparently it's pretty good. Level. All right. Restrictions, science, technology, playlists. Okay, it's got way too many things in here. They have so many options now when you publish stuff. All right. Good. So I was able to place you guys into the UI. Do that. All right. I think that's good. And now, actually, I do want to do one more thing. See if I can share this. Where's the share? The nitty-gritty, behind-the-scenes look of what we're doing. I don't live stream often enough to be really that good at it. There's the link. All right. I can go back to that background, and now I can put that on Twitter and reply. Alrighty. Oops, I did it from the wrong account, but whatever. Just retweet it from the other one. Yeah, Adam, you weren't here for last week. I think most of you weren't here for last week. So just to review, the idea that an aggregate is you have to populate everything in your aggregate if you're doing event sourcing just to process a command, but a lot of that information is not needed. So if you think of an order, adding, there's an invariant and like a business requirement that you can't add more than $100 worth of orders, then you might have you might have the need to only look at events that have been, the addition of items. And worse than that, the items might just have IDs. They might have no information on the actual price, but you have a different aggregate that is got all the information in events about the price of that item. So think about that of how you would, use a read model to populate that information into the command, etc. But what if you can start to tighten up those things and start to look at these invariants as different indexes where you're putting together events such as product, product pricing set with the items being added, and then that's the stream that you're talking about. It's a made up stream. It's not a traditional per entity stream in this case. So that's what I want to explore. We'll take a simpler case first. I started last week with a case of unique email. The easy answer is just make the name of the stream the email, and then you'll get a collision if you try to make a stream of the same name. But let's just say we have to use IDs only. What would that look like? So maybe I'll draw some of this in our chat here. Let me go back to this.
So what you're essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're really looking to do is pull a set of events, kind of combine those that probably or may have been part of different aggregates, if you will, historically.
Yeah, exactly. So think about just your entire stream of every event that's relevant to do, to do whatever you need to do in processing the next command. Because a lot of times it's just eventual consistency, etc. But the idea is that you already have all of the information in the events in EventStore. So there's two things we covered last time: pushing the actual command handler logic into the EventStore to process it there. Right, that's another one. Attach it to this idea of having the actual indexing of this type done in the projection side, or even beforehand in the same engine that actually looks at the compare and swap type of operation for the event number in the stream. Substitute that or augment that with yet another indexing scheme, which is this idea that you're going to have for example, if it's an item added or item removed and order closed, so you can reduce the number of outstanding dollars, the price being set. If those types of events all are adding to quote unquote an index that you can use, and if any of those events happen, you need to increment the sequence number on that clump of data together. There could be others that an event diagram share some of the events, but they would have their own sequences, and so now you have a locking mechanism. So depending on the how elaborate the calculation is, that may be a large or small delay. It may be a trivial delay because we're just adding numbers for the amount of outstanding dollars and maybe multiplying it by quantity to the current price for that product. So it shouldn't be a lot of extra calculations. And you should still be able to get that performance. Makes sense?
I think I follow. Yeah.
So I'm trying to look on. I'm going to change here. Let's see how well I can do. OBS. Video source.
Yeah. The only question I have on that is then for the event is usually tied to some type of entity, or a general identifier. And so would that index be pulling from multiple identifiers and then calculating data off of that, or is that specific for one event stream?
I think it'll be types of events. I don't think it'll be even IDs of others, because the idea is that this is agnostic of entities.
I follow. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm with you. Okay.
Right. So, I think, geez. Sorry, I'm just trying to add I'm trying to add the Miro board for your viewing pleasure here, and I'm having an issue finding the right source. Screen capture. There it is. Just pick the wrong one.
Because your example of those prices per per item, where that item you only have the idea, you're going to read a clump of changes to those prices, and that could
Well,
be
I'm assuming that I'm just throwing that in there to be complete. I'm assuming that if you wanted to be more complete, you would actually have you wouldn't need to do that because when you add an item to your invoice or a line item, you're probably taking a projection already of what someone saw on the screen or what the system knows it showed to the user to then inject that as part of the event so that it was, this product for this price at this quantity is the actual event data in that event. But, I want to play with pushing to the extremes the, third normal form nature of databases into streams to show how that would play out. And maybe if I have no discounts or other things, I may just have the order include the product ID. That's all I need. It's just this person has ordered, 3 of this product ID, and that is the cleanest event I can have. There may be business reasons why you would include prices because of whatever, but if we want to keep to that third normal form, just enough information to account for state change and no more, then there is a reason for you not to include the price as you're ordering, as you're adding that. And you have to, to be able to, you should be able to recreate what that order is at any point in time. Oh geez, what the heck? So I've done something here to OBS that's not. The name is already in use. What? Got it. I created another source here. Oh, there it is. Okay.
So Adam, I'm not sure if I'm following you or not. Are we talking about an aggregate that is sort of acting as a view model?
No,
remodel?
We're talking about the idea of what the purpose of an aggregate is, and a lot of times in event sourcing, it's a way to get a consistency boundary to make sure you're only looking at all that you need to make a decision to get that particular entity to its next state, and not involve everything else and do the equivalent of locking entire tables if you're doing a traditional application, right? So we're making this functional little state machine that all I need to know is the history in its events that constitute its state, and if I have all of those, I can make a decision. But that's only a part of the story. There's a lot of external like invariants that require you to know that, for example, there's other orders outstanding, and I have a business rule that says I can't have more than $1,000 of outstanding orders at any one point because this is a cash register thing, and there's 12 tills at the store. For safety reasons, we can't have more than 1,000. Something's going wrong if that happens. That's our business rule. So you either redesign your entire system to say that no, now we're going to have an aggregate called outstanding orders, and I'm going to always have to event source that, and so events are going to belong to that stream. And then what do I do for orders? Do I treat orders as not an aggregate because they're only views into my concurrency aggregate? Kind of goes like, okay, well, we kind of shifted the entire business because we have this constraint of what an aggregate can have in it, and we have an either or situation, which kind of sucks. So what we want to see is, can we interpret events, the same events for different ideas that act like aggregates, but they're no longer tied to an ID, which is a traditional way of thinking of aggregates, if that makes sense. So that's what we're exploring, is how to, tighten up that feedback loop and the eventual consistency of projections of other things, just to look at it in a pure mathematical, functional way of saying that I now have a good way of filtering all events so that I can make a decision about whether this next one goes in. And I want to erase this guide that aggregates gave me to be free to think of it mathematically and just think of the complexity of maintaining those indexes and other things to see what trade-offs I have. Because the traditional way would be, You have a read model for outstanding orders. As new orders are coming in or line items being added to existing orders, you would have a counter that would, some sort of accumulator of value of outstanding orders. It would also listen to orders completed and subtract all those line items that it was keeping track of and get the total back down to how many outstanding things are. You would feed that read model's amounts into as a parameter into the command that goes into another order being opened, and you would reject it if that showed 1001 or more, and that's the traditional easy sort of way to do it, which is fine. I just think there's an opportunity here to really move things even further towards event sourcing and stream data as a way of working, where you tighten that loop of having to go through that read model, creating that projection, and shove it right back into the actual command handler that's looking at indexes of these things. So, if that makes sense, is that a good way, Adam? Maybe you have a better way of explaining that.
No, I don't, because I think the interesting bit there is the decoupling of that identifier for that stream and
Right.
those indexes. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm interested in that. That's curious.
Yeah. Let me just see what I can do with this. Oh gosh, this is the wrong thing. Okay, sorry. I was trying to get the Miro board up, and I got the wrong thing here. So I'm gonna just see if I can delete this. Remove. Yes. Add another screen capture. So I can show you what I'm talking about. I think we talked about it last time. Okay. Cool. Screen, advanced settings. You know what? I think this was... There's too many options in OBS. I need to capture the window, not the screen. Full screen projection. No. Okay. Remove. Try one more time. Okay, I think this time I'll get it. Window capture. There we go. Okay, I found it. Let's see if we can do that. And then we want...
Is there a reason why you're calling them indexes versus projections? There's got to be a a reason.
The reason I'm calling it an index is because you have to find stuff that's relevant in how you're storing all of those events. So, for example, you're going to have a supplementary index to identify the particular order. Maybe there's another like maybe you have to have ordering, for example, so the date's important so that you know when things happen. So there's an indexing part of the data that you're kind of projecting and how you can sort it. So yeah, you could say that the index is part of the projection itself, or you can say that there's a projection, but it's helped by an index to be created. So for example, if I have an event that now needs to look up a previous event somewhere in history for some particular data, like maybe the price of a product, I should have an index that's helping me find that product really quickly. So there's an indexing component. So rebalancing trees and all that is going to be part of the computation, which is why I say that this constraint may not be free, and might have some complexity, but it's fine. It's a trade-off. It's like, yeah, our instance of EventStore is slower, but we're getting all of this functionality for being able to just deal with concurrency and just understand that mathematically we've proved that no outstanding orders in our shop ever went past $1,000. We can mathematically prove it, and maybe in a situation where it's a trading company, like market trading, etc., where there's rules and regulations, that may be a licensing thing where if you do something past the threshold, you lose your license, you're out of business. So you need to have, say, oh, everything's eventual consistency, and now we have to, have these reservation systems that we model. Well, what if we just bake that mathematically into the event store itself? And not just have the guarantee of like, oh, I expected event number 11 and then I'm already at event 12, I have to reject. Why don't we have a way to push the actual logic and code, kind of like stored procedures, into that? Now, if we do have an engine for like JavaScript or whatever, or maybe multiple languages, we can still author all these things in our IDEs, but the host for that solution in this functional paradigm and serverless paradigm, if those functions are hosted within EventStore instead of some stupid cloud thing that's just, running Node for you or whatever, we have so much more value, and we can have that, serverless mindset hosted within EventStore with so much better information available at any particular point, and not just one particular concurrency guarantee, which is the event number in a particular stream, but have these more elaborate ones where we have a trade-off for its calculation. That's what I'm after. Make sense?
That is very interesting. I'm interested to see this.
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love for it to already exist, right? That would be really, really cool. I think I figured out my sharing thing here. Yes, I have. You guys see that now, right?
Yes.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good. Now I can just move around all of... That's Rambox that I'm using to contain all of my web applications, web pages. And it's really good because it keeps in check misbehaving applications, i.e., if you have a tab like that has Slack or something in it, I just get rid of it. It's like, yeah, you're gone. And I'll just make it overflow a bit here. We don't see. Okay, there we go. All right, now I'm happy. I can actually see some stuff. I don't see our faces, so I'll have to move that down here. There we go. I got floating heads as we look at that. Now you guys are maybe I could just share my screen because you're on Zoom. So I'm just gonna share my screen and then I'll just do that. Oh, but then you guys disappear from here. If it's not one thing, it's another. Okay, I think I can fit you back in. There you go. Man, OBS is so awesome. I can't believe that it's free. Open source for the win. Cool. All right. There we go. Let's see. Admit. Oh, Andreas is here. That's good. Okay, let's have this down here. I probably need a second monitor. It's getting a little ridiculous. Okay, so where did we discuss this stuff? Gosh, it's been so much that's been going on in here. I think I might have started this discussion when Andreas was here last time, so this has been a topic that's been going on for a bit. Let's see here. No, that's the stuff of new features with Rick. What was this? Ah, yes. This is where we... Yeah, so the interesting part here, Adam, that we went through as well is what if our actual view of the world, if we have everything in EventStore and we have the source code in there too, why isn't the source code part of the events, right? Like even in the pseudo language like we have here, if we register user, so not exists in Joel select email from events user registered, right? This is where the indexing comes in, right? To be able to find these things. So Does that make sense, Adam?
Yeah, I think I follow.
Because just think about adding the actual code that's your command handler uh, validation as being okay, cool. I know that I stored this event, so something checked whether this was okay in my business. Uh, but I don't know what. I always have to go cross reference and check my source control. And we talked about this last time too. Is like, my pet peeve with source control is that no one's including the dialogue in the forums, or the actual issue tracking is done separately in a separate database. It's just text. Why is that not in the source code repository right next to the project, so you have it right there as a single source of truth? And you migrate from SourceForge to GitHub, then to GitLab, and there's all this like, oh, we need to migrate the issues, but the issues are in this format, and it just, oh yeah, sorry, we don't know what happened back then because we don't have the issue tracker from back then, or we do, but it's a pain in the ass to to spin up whatever the hell we were using 20 years ago. So open standards and all that is great. So the same idea here. If we're going to be traceable and accountable, why are we not adding to the events the actual the actual code that we used to run the invariant? And we made a joke last time on this meetup that, well, why don't we understand your state of mind when you made your decision to click that button and capture all of the environmental factors that led the system to change from A to B. So yeah, there's obviously a reasonable level of data that you want to put in here. But I think if we have systems thinking in place and we draw a rectangle around all the things we control in the system, that does include the source code that's running. That does include what the person saw on their screen. And short of having a camera behind them looking at what they're pressing on the actual website, we can say that, hey, we have the person looked at a rendering of that page that looked like this, and they clicked buy because they thought they were getting a 20% discount, and we had a bug that showed a 20% discount, and they bought something and didn't, and that's why they're upset. So you wouldn't have that information if you're just doing event sourcing as it's been taught. You need to store in a more readily available format what that was. And so pushing that extreme led to this, well, why don't we have the actual rendering of the screens, the web pages, in EventStore itself too? So if that's the source of the actual screens as well, we don't have to sync up with another system as to what was a source of truth for doing all of this. And that's kind of where we left off the last meetup, was exploring how far we can push these things. The initial talks here were about how we're going to, this is with the indexing. You're asking about the indexing, so we need to have, maybe there's particular fields we're looking for in the specific events. We need to have those things indexed. And so, for example, this would be the email and the registered one that we would need to index on, etc. And then how do we have inside EventStore tracking these internal quote unquote read models that may or may not be materialized like that, but it would have, for example, this function might be indexed, and it might be used for another place where email needs to be unique. So that calculation's already done. It can already have, make use of that internal projection to use that kind of constraint. And then there's already engines that do this, and compilers. So there's a way to plug in what already exists in a lot of other places and make use of it in EventStore. And so, that's kind of how we have this invariant checker that could be way more capable than just what we currently use in event sourcing. So there's a ton of, the nice thing about pushing the boundaries is that we're finding just so much more so much more in terms of the application of event sourcing, where it makes even more sense and we get even more accountable systems. And we have systems that are much easier to maintain and debug because we have evidence in terms of actual breadcrumbs. We're not just, compare this to log files in something. It's just ridiculous, right? This is literally what code ran for you to get in a particular state. It's right next to the information that it's stored. It's like, this happened and it's because of this code. Oh, there's a bug in there? That's tethered swimming for you. You had that in there for a year. And here are all the events that have that exact invariant checker there. I don't have to cross-reference that. I don't have to make sure that I had my semantic versioning on my events line up with what I published. Oh, you had blue-green deploys. You don't know exactly what was being, executed during your deployment yet because some of the nodes weren't upgraded yet. Well, there's no problem if you use this, right? You know exactly what was being done, and that's very important in high integrity systems. You need that level of assurance that you're not going to get shut down by trading commission or something like that because of you're outside of what they'll just bring evidence in and you have to defend yourself. Hey, it looks like we have information that we're trading above what you're licensed for, and you're like, this is our evidence and you better have something from your end to say that nope, it's not. Guess what? It's not going to be crappy little logs that they're not going to trust because you can edit them about what happened. It's going to be something more, where you paid attention to it and had it as part of your system, part of that integrity. Yeah.
Wouldn't you still have the problem of kind of read logs, even with an index?
Yeah, we would have a problem of locks, but we're okay with that because we're able to have a fine-grained, what's it called, a fine-grained control as to what is getting locked because of these indexes, right? So in this case, we have just the email, but you can start, yeah.
Okay, that scales better then, I guess.
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to other things that have been done in traditional databases anyway. So there's a ton of work done in traditional databases for this type of indexing, composable indexes, multi-field indexes, and how they get, there's books and books. We've spent so many decades relying on relational databases to be maximized to their efficiency and locking, row locking, record locking even, or whatever schemes they came up with. So there's a huge body of work that's a missed opportunity, I think, to leverage and use within EventStore. One might say, well, why don't you just use the RDBMS and extend some low-level stuff in an RDBMS to have an event stream. And I think some people have done that already. But then you have a very heavyweight solution because you're dragging in everything else. The advantage of an RDBMS is for the tabular data representation, and that's it. It's not optimized for these write-heavy things, which is what EventStore is optimized for. But it doesn't mean you can't augment that. And I think getting rid of these round trips and out-of-process trips will make a big difference. And it's just an extension of what they're already doing just within one stream. And just add it for outside the stream. And just look at the actual event data. The sequence number and the IDs and stream IDs, that's just data. Let's look at the actual fields in the events too, and also index those when needed and when we want to. Run it as is now if you want to continue to do it this way, but allow the the extensibility, so you can make a trade-off and still use the same patterns that EventStore supports for everything else around it, because it's very good in having the catch-up stream and all those things, and having the chasing reader to make sure you're only reading from things that are stored to disk, as far as you know. Those are really good things that other products don't put a focus on and won't give you that level of integrity. Make sense?
Very
Yeah.
cool. This is Roberto Seringer. I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to come in, and I'm coming in late.
Oh, no
So there's a
problem.
lot of other detail. Yeah, you've covered, I'm sure. My question was, how would this change if you were using this in memory? Using an in-memory data grid, for example, to
Oh yeah, it would be way
accelerate this
faster.
and-
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing saying that it doesn't have to be in memory. And I think the indexing part, you would want it to be in memory. I think you wouldn't want those indexes to be needing to go to disk.
Exactly.
And I think, you have to question what needs to be. This is actually a helper to get things done faster. So I don't think you need to have it sit on disk absolutely, but you need to check whether the in-memory thing is up to date, and you can still have sequence numbers within a particular indexed projection that we're talking about here, that would be able to, if it's up to date in memory, then use it and that'll go correctly. And this is all just like Git history and Merkle trees and all that kind of stuff about having the integrity of the last written reference. So that same scheme can work here. And yes, if you have a cached in-memory version that you can verify that is up to date, then perfect. Why not? I mean, that's absolutely right. Yes. I mean, that's what I would do. And the cacheability of immutable systems and immutable ledger is exactly that. And these indexes that we're building that are helpers here are in the same, done in the same spirit, that they're additive only. You may have different versions that you go through with, as you rebalance trees for indexes and whatever, but that's okay. There's probably sections of those trees, if you pick the right one, that can be cached themselves. And again, it's just like Git history and hash, rolling hashes and things like that you can make use of. That will give you that very quick check that, yes, this is something I can rely on, and therefore I can write this event, because I guarantee that at this point in time it will not put me over $1,000 of outstanding orders. And then that's amazing, right? So maybe we'll I'm really excited for the next now that EventStore has real funding added, and that's I'm quite happy about that, because they're going to be able to build all of these things off of these concepts in in a way that we can guarantee live production systems make use of it. And I'm excited about having that level of traceability, for not having to go and look in different places as to why we broke a business rule at some point in our history. I need to know that. So yeah, a lot of things in play here. Well, I'd like to open up an actual code sample in this, like just to either augment EventStore itself, or to make a more experimental project where we're using a rudimentary EventStore, what's it called, implementation, like one that I made that was just text-based. So yeah, I don't know what your ideas are on that. I certainly would like to have a something that's a teachable tool, like teach these kind of concepts, and I think that will open people up to, like, oh, having events is so incredibly powerful and advantageous, and see that the projections are just the helpers. yeah, we've been stuck in a different way of thinking, but being able to mathematically prove that we can make proper state transitions, and it's the code is at the data, we can glue it responsibly together and have, you know, a proper breadcrumb trail of everything. There's no crazy debugging sessions and trying to restore 5 gigabytes of production data to slog through debugging sessions for days to find out what happened, right? I mean, we're already not doing that with event sourcing alone, but we can do even better. There's so much more to build on here, where we have everything together, and just for fun, I'd love to see, you know, an event store, like I said before, an event store based full stack application where there's nothing except, you know, a patched up event store serving up the pages, doing everything. And why not? It would be kind of cool. So next steps, I guess we could start coding some of this. Let's open up some of our IDEs here, at least get some pseudocode done to talk about. Let's see. I hope I updated the licenses. Every February I have the renewals for JetBrains, and sometimes they don't. Oh yeah, gosh darn it. And because I have two-factor authentication for JetBrains accounts, I need to use the activation code. Yeah, let's see if I can do that real quick here. Meanwhile, any other questions? That was a really good question, by the way. I'm happy to answer more. I hope your brains are thinking about the possibilities. What we can do here.
And just for my knowledge to make sure I'm really understanding. So like what we're saying here is this command is really going to be stored inside of EventStore, which gives you that that full check. So if I wanted to replay this series of commands, I run it through the invariant checker, or I run it through the program, and it runs all these commands, and I can potentially compare the created event stream to what I currently have, and you should get the exact same thing.
Yeah, you could always validate that, right? And I mean, there's the chicken and the egg thing, because you have to figure out what version of EventStore actually ran the interpretation of that invariant. So you kind of can't get away from it. Like I said, capturing the picture of the whole world would mean also having a snapshot of your entire OS that's running this thing, right? Because there might be some environmental reason why a calculation went wrong. So, but, you know, there's a limit of usefulness for that. I mean, you're not gonna, I guess with NixOS and other things you have, and Docker, you have images. But even then, you know, you have hardware that may interpret that, and there's no way to capture that. So there's a limit to how much you can do. But I think from the pure sort of functional point of view, this is a responsible level, because aside from implementation bugs, you're going to have exactly what code ran at that particular moment, as far as you can help it. And that's going to be, you know, if I look at an event stream and I say there's a bug, like, you know, a month ago with this person's order, and I look at the events, and in those events I can have those invariants sitting there, like all your command handler code literally there for these things, saying that, oh, I see, this is, I can run that, right? I can copy paste that or open it up in my IDE and replay all the events up to that point, feed it through, step through, and go, oh yeah, there was a bug here, or it's as intended, or whatever. Yeah, the reliability and the accessibility to data versus what code actually ran at that point to make that work is not a bunch of Git gymnastics to bisect and find out what was actually released, and maybe it happened during release with that blue-green deploy scenario where over the next minute you're switching out the particular nodes to be the next version, and so you have all that to deal with. It would be nice if that was stuck right next to the data, so there's no doubt as to why an event exists in history.
Right, because then you could actually take this. Now this invariant checker, that's actually executing the invariant. So even if we did say, hey, we're going to change invariants, the invariant checker really doesn't change. It's the actual implementation of that invariant if your registered user actually changed those invariants.
Well, let's say we drop that invariant in our next version of the system. That would just be a blank field. And
Gotcha.
And those are the events that will get stored. The invariant is like a no-op. And we just accept register user, and we don't care if there's more.
I follow. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be kind of cool, but yeah, you can see there's two approaches to this. Stuff all of this functionality into EventStore itself, or immediately around it, or fork it and add this functionality, or take make a system that does all this and incorporates EventStore for just the indexing part, and at least close the loop so there's no network travel, or have it on the same machine or whatever, or same Docker container. Not that I recommend running EventStore in Docker, but some people do. And then there's so that you're not getting those round trips. So all of this stuff can actually sit just outside of EventStore. And the API that you have provides you this. So the API would strip out your invariant, and you could implement this yourself. Use a projection or some other scheme outside of EventStore to do that. And maybe use EventStore for just, some other kind of surrogate streams that would give you that ordering. So that's another way of doing it. I gotta search for my JetBrains license. Always get caught doing this. This happened to me last time too.
I have a question, and I'm not sure if I can articulate it.
No, go for it.
Okay, so if we're storing the basically the code along with the events in the EventStore.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that if we were to run through it again, we don't want anything to change. We don't want to. You wouldn't go back and remove existing events out of your EventStore, just like you wouldn't today.
That's correct.
Okay. Some of the code that I have is doing the work on the right side of the database. That never changes, but the code that I have to build my read side, I may change that to build new projections and replay my events to have new projections. So would I store that code in a separate place so that it could be modified?
So the code for your projections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's another chapter to this, is exactly that, because I do want to understand what code was run for the projections. Now, if we're going to be building an entire system outside on top of EventStore and have EventStore host everything, then we're going to have to do that anyway, because we're going to have views of what that is. Internally here, we're already doing this. Like these read models that you're looking at here are they are read models. They are projections of state. So yeah, I think the read side is another one to look at. I think it'll be a lot easier. I mean, you already have projections supported in EventStore, so that I don't think it would be a far stretch to make use of that to do whatever we want with projection data. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I hope that answers your question.
I may have missed what you were doing there. So you're storing the code for the projections inside the projections. You
could, yeah. Why not?
And when you rewrite them, you can rewrite them with new.
Well, think about authoring them. Back in 2008 when I first talked about this with Greg, I always wanted to have meta events that would be inserted into the stream to change your schema of a projection, so that you would know exactly when a projection changed, so that you knew what people would have seen. Because right now there is no accountability for when a projection changed. The only accountability you have is for the event stream and its integrity. So you have to bake in or make use of the event stream itself to track when your projections have changed and to what. That puts an exact point in time when the next event is going to be read by an entirely different projection, and it's guaranteed to be read by that projection. Or at least if it takes time to warm up, you can say, I added this new projection here, and it warmed up, here. And therefore, after it was warmed up and went online, then all the events started to, you populate that instead of the old one. And at that point, I can say that the projection was showing this data instead of the old data form. And so, yeah, this is discussed quite early. It was kind of too much to kind of push into event sourcing, which was really kind of a novel way for a lot of people to work, and they weren't ready to do that. But now that we have a lot of streaming and ledger type approaches out there, then it's a lot easier to get these concepts moved forward now. But in 2008, it was like, why the hell would you do that? It was just it's something. It was an academic question more so than something that you would want to put in or code up to have even more things to maintain. It was out of the question for most line of business things. But now I think it's the right time to push it again further and further. And I look forward to the day when the debugging experience is just a trivial exercise where you're just walking like a Git history. You're walking the information history of exactly what happened, but that includes all the functionality alongside all the time, and you always know what's going on. So yeah, looking forward to that day.
You'd also need to track which version of the read model was viewed by the user at that point of time, as it can change. And yeah, I guess you most probably also would want to track that.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So
it's reminds me of I guess Alberto came up with the picture that explains the world in regards to event storming, where it's this user looking at a view and there's the world.
Yeah.
So there's things we cannot track, but the view we could track somehow. And I guess it makes a difference, or I'm sure it makes a difference which version that the user saw at this particular point of time. Did it include this new attribute that we kind of re-rendered into the view?
Yeah, that's right.
Or didn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's kind of funny that all of these folks are talking about the same thing, because I think when people look at event sourcing, we all start to push the boundaries in our minds. Well, if this worked so well, what else can we do? Can we get more accountability and traceability? And I think before you joined, we were talking about exactly this. Is outside of having a camera behind you looking at what you're actually seeing on your screen and pressing buttons and storing those images and video capture of that alongside the events to give you what you actually saw on the screen, to tie it together to why that event got created in the first place in the event stream, right? We had fun joking about that in the last meetup, because so many different things. I mean, where do you stop? Do you need to know the person's blood alcohol level when they're shopping online? It's just never, you could never stop. So this is why we're discussing, where's your system boundary where we draw the lines? Okay, that's all I can capture. And I think this is a good place where, if I know that the invariants are the source code. I mean, why wouldn't we store the source code alongside the events? Git compresses source code quite well. Why can't that engine be put inside EventStore itself? And when you have, the code execution path, or the files or the sections and the functions that were ran to get that event in, why is that not stored right next to it? You could certainly version that and compress it just as Git does in its pack files. So it wouldn't cost you a lot of storage space. And, you could have a viewer. I mean, I'm thinking of the EventStore, admin dashboard. You could go back to, you could look at a particular stream, inspect a particular event, and then get the entire execution path of exactly what was executed, with variables, variable values, and everything. A full stack trace type thing with variables output shown as well, parameter values shown throughout the whole thing, up to the point that the event got stored. No, wouldn't that not work? And even for meta level, the EventStore data itself, the EventStore's source code itself as well underneath that. I don't know. I guess you wouldn't
My
be
impression
able.
is that my impression is that's an event diagram in itself.
Yeah, it is, and I would basically say that what we would have is a line to draw in the sand, because are we going to store node modules? Where perhaps, I mean, as long as there's another system that maybe stores the hashes of the graphs of those node modules directories, so that we don't have to store a lot. You can offload a lot of that, but I would love to have a very quick way to just understand exactly what got ran, and the different types of compression schemes that are out there right now. Clicking on a specific event would be quite interesting, just to see, like, hey, yeah, and at the same time here, just press this little plus and it'll show you exactly what code got ran at that time. No? Andreas, is that kind of like what you're going after?
Maybe wasn't thinking of node modules and maybe this, what would you think of regular code? But it's interesting, kind of all the code. I mean, that, yeah, would go even further. I was just thinking of those kind of pieces that are in regards to the invariants that can be ensured by looking only at the past events.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's exactly my question is, what's the right place to stop?
And I guess you could have a kind of a lower, kind of more constraints there, kind of its own language, or its kind of most probably JavaScript or something, but just the parts that are needed to run these queries on those indexes.
Yeah, we had that discussion earlier about, what do we want to, like, for example, here we have, some sort of language that we would support ourselves that's just built for indexing.
Yeah, call it eSQL or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Something.
Exactly. So that might be something that's like EventStore DB, some flavor of JavaScript or Lua or whatever language that we want to use. Could be some kind of jQuery syntax. We already have JQ using some selectors and things like that could be easily tokenized, and then you could infer from it which fields to index to make it faster and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that. I mean, I'd love to see this. I mean, this is.
Yeah,
I talked to.
Otherwise, yeah,
Go
like I
ahead.
said, if we are talking about kind of more other code in general, then we would also talk about side effectful code, right? Here you could say, okay, this is only in regards to state that we have inside the event store. But if you can run arbitrary code, then yeah, you could involve external state at the time, and
Yeah,
it
but
would
that
not.
ends up the external state ends up being just a traditional command parameter, no?
Yeah, you're right. Like the views that if you would do it the traditional way, kind of just make that as an additional parameter to the command, and then just any other external state would be like yeah, okay. But that code to kind of get this input would also need to run.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe that is, I mean, so it goes back to the question: where do you draw your system boundary? If I consider that part of my system, then why wouldn't I not want to get that stack trace of that code into the event as well? Because you're right, it's evidence as to how perhaps that code had a bug in it, and I reported the temperature outside as being 5 degrees off, and then this command got sent to turn the thermostat down, and my houseplants died or whatever, right? It's you have you have that evidence, and I don't want to maybe go to source code and dig through that, reverse engineer what was running at that particular point, find the tag, make sure it was released on that exact time because that's when the thermostat ran its thing or whatever, right? So I think having it right there removes my my need to go hunting around. And I think storing stack traces of a specific format, not entirely ad hoc, you would have you have really good indexing to and compression algorithms to store that in a way that wouldn't really add a lot of data and overhead. And of course, you could the same things apply to this like any other event stream. You could tombstone it and put it on cold storage and all those other things. So I think a system would be able to run just as fast. Especially like, a system doesn't change that code very often. It's only when you change the code anywhere in that whole cycle that you would have to reindex or recompress things. But there may be some compression algorithms out there that find the variance in the actual textual visualization of that stack trace, where just your variable values are different, but the labels and everything else, even the sequence of what ran, might be identical 90% of the time. So all that should compress incredibly well, no?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a compression expert, but I'm sure people have looked at, schemes where, it's a stack trace that they're with variable values and parameter values embedded, how you would compress that.
Yeah, and we would need to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
and you
said,
can
you
just
cannot
optimize it.
capture
Just store
everything,
it as is, right? Store it as is for now, and then just let the community start to optimize the heck out of it. Add the different add all those clearly defined areas of caching and compression and all the other things that'll slowly start to make it into the approach. So yeah, this is very exciting. If I didn't have all my project work right now, that's what I'd be doing for my project all day long. It's just, hey, I got a whole web application running just in EventStore. I've forked EventStore, added these things, and my deployment is just run EventStore. It takes the requests on this and spits out web pages with with things that have another API endpoint that just ends up working. So that's exciting. See, I wish I was going to university right now because I'd be working on that. That's part of my
Interesting.
comp sci stuff. I mean, think of all the advantages. Just so many problems would go away. Just that traceability, no hunting around, proper history of, of what your system was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. One remark regarding the serverless part that you mentioned before, because one of the tenets for me always was and still is, if you don't use it, you don't pay for it. And even today, it's already hard kind of to have some EventStore functionality serverless. And this would be even harder.
You think? Why would it be harder? I mean, you're just hosting EventStore. Maybe there's a cloud provider that you can host it on where they charge you per CPU cycles, and so if it's not being used, you're not really, using it.
Yeah, I mean, once we have something like this, let me know. Because so far it's instance based, and even if it's $1 per month, the thing is, yeah, and I'm not talking about storage, of course. If you have stored something, you have to pay for the storage somehow.
Well, we would have the the cold storage migrations for older events. That's still at play. That doesn't change. I think we could still do it here. Actually, it's interesting. That's another topic we could cover, is because these invariants, for example, even in this case, where you have an existing email, that the existing emails have to be somewhere, so you can't really archive the whole complete list of emails.
Would it introduce like a write amplification factor as well? I know, like, I've seen some places that have like 30 indices on their events tables in their Postgres event stores, and it introduces so much write latency.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure about that. Give me an example. We're almost out of time, unfortunately, today. But
yeah, no, I
that's
think
a good...
like for me, like one of the benefits of event stores is just how simple they are.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about a sequential log and a binary tree index.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
And like when we're talking about adding these invariants into the event store, that sounds to me like we're going to be adding another index to track, and that can introduce like now you're writing your log and two indices, and then you add another and another and another.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off, and I don't think we would want it everywhere. And before you joined, we kind of picked up where we left off last week, and we talked about having this maybe live just outside of EventStore, and just maybe just remove the network traffic aspect of the delays. And so maybe that's the happy middle ground. But maybe there are extreme cases where you need the integrity to be as close as possible to the data, and it has to be in process at the time of writing as soon as possible. That entire CQRS circle to be done almost instantaneously, with the automation being done. Now, this is the reason that the invariant code gets injected, is so that you're tightening that circle for events for CQRS.
But can you change invariants then, or are you kind of removing that option from you? What if you discover that your invariant was modeled wrong?
Oh no, that's what will happen is that let's say my invariant is stupidly case sensitive, and it's not supposed to be for emails. So I have this dumb index where I have capital J and Joe as a different entry to Joe, and that's creating a bug because people can use alternate casing and can have multiple accounts. So let's see what would happen when we want to correct that. We would start to write the proper invariant where you would have L case around exists in, or whatever, right? That's the thing that you would add into that invariant code. So it would be different invariant code. And now, because the hash is different for that code, see there's this invariance thing here, that would have a different hash, and it wouldn't get existed yet. So there would be a new, new invariant created here. This is part of this giant thing here. And it would find that there is no entry for an invariant of that particular signature, and would have to build up that index for something that indexes just lowercase versions of that field. And it's interesting because you're right, there is some things that now exist in the events that disqualify it, that already have made the invariant, it wouldn't have passed with that. But I guess what you're saying, what we need to show is that the index would have to be, maybe it would be the same index, I don't know. But it would have this, you potentially would have to rebuild it. Let's make it less trivial. Instead of casing, but something else. You would have to replace that entire invariant to be something else. So you'd have to grandfather that one, because it would never be ran anymore. And so that particular hash of this piece here would need to be retired. It wouldn't be indexed anymore because nothing's coming in. You might have some admin things to control that. If something has been used in more than a month, then you just put it to cold storage. And if someone starts to use that invariant again for whatever reason, you have a bit of a warm-up time. It's part of your SLA, whatever. Or if you know it's going to get used, you can warm it up yourself the day before or whatever it takes.
Blue-green it, like
something. We can. That's another topic we could get into. But I think that's kind of like where, you raise a good point though, because introducing a new invariant because you had a more permissive one in this case, adding these duplicates because of casing. Now the new invariant, when you build up an index, you're going like, okay, you're building an invariant on something on data that already broke the invariant, right?
Exactly.
So that means, but that's okay. That is the state of the situation. There's nothing we can do about that. So we still need to index all those old events with all those entries for those fields, and support the new version of the interpretation. So there may be a surrogate index. There might be just another index that's added on top of that. Now we need to update too. But the good thing is that we could probably have a rule in there or some sort of logic that would not require us to update the old one anymore, and it wouldn't incur any more lookups in it or whatever, or inserts into it anymore. So it's an interesting field. I'm sure a lot of it has already been addressed in traditional RDBMS things, I know in
Postgres, like if you're making a new unique index, it just tells you no.
Yeah. So maybe that's the advantage. In this case, we can say yes. We support it because we understand that your business has realized it made a mistake, or your business has changed, and so there you go. Maybe it's a requirement.
Another thing in this, which is you have the user registered event that comes later, but now that event type has to be restricted, right?
Yes.
There has to be an access control on particular event types in the event store from now on, and only the event store itself is allowed to issue event types of user registered.
Yeah, there's a ton of different schemes you can go into, but I like the way that this topic is expanding and evolving, because we're starting to push the boundaries of what other people have already kind of beaten to death out there, and we want to start to see where else we can go. What's the next chapter in event sourcing? And I like the fact that you brought up that with the traditional RDBMS, it'll just tell you forget about it. It's not in that row. There's entries that are not unique. So what are you going to do about it? Go make another table, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe there's another. Maybe that's essentially what we're doing here. It's just it presents itself in a friendlier way to business, which is another advantage of this, ledger thinking. So. But anyway, that's all we have.
Yeah, that'd be a time scope index then. It's valid from today, and maybe not regarding the past existing data, but it's just the time scope thing.
That's right. Except that in this case we have you know, the existing users with their emails that we have to include in there. But that might be a transformation where we do a reduce on those and and uh, and kind of bootstrap the initial values to, you know, you lowercase everything and only take the unique values and bootstrap that view with that one and drop the old one.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah.
yeah, you know, that would work. But anyway, folks, we have I don't have more time today, unfortunately. I try to get these in as much as I can, but unfortunately, I have a meeting I'm late to, and sorry for the late start. I was coming out of a meeting before that, so I'll try to. This is very related to the last meetup. I'm still working on the video from last week, but I want to take the good parts of both of these videos and stick them in as one. So I hope that you join us again. Actually, we'll see what time. We're gonna have to change the time for next week and the week after, because Vaughn's class, I'm having the workshop. So if you haven't signed up yet, especially North America, you have a little bit more time. But the Europeans, they have until Wednesday, I think, to sign up for the class. That'll be Thursday, Friday. So next Friday, I'll probably have a lot of the participants come in and have this at a slightly different time, perhaps. Might be the same time. I'll have to double check. But definitely look out for a potential time change for next Friday and the following Friday, because that's the North American one. So Vaughn's excellent series of training workshops. I'm happy to be part of that. So let me know if you have people that want to go, and maybe there's maybe if you know students that would like this, there's probably something that I can work out with Vaughn to get a discount for students and others. So do get in contact with me or Vaughn. Vaughn Vernon, of course, is the Red Book author for DDD. So next week and the week after, look out for those workshops. I've announced them. I'm probably going to publish again on Twitter to remind people that they're coming up, but I hope to see you there. Let everyone know. We're going to be talking about, you know, we're not going to be getting into this, but I'm going to mention this stuff in the workshop as a food for thought for the attendees. But it should be a good basis for everyone to get to the same spot of thinking and getting used to event sourcing and event modeling for their solutions. So thank you so much, everyone. I will see you all next week, hopefully around the same time. Otherwise, just look out for updates on the Meetup and Twitter, and I'll let you know if things change. But thank you again, and we'll have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next week.